Can you think of one?
Michael Jai White?
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
When I really flared toward him is that he was hurting the stunt guys. And one of my very good friends, a guy named James Liu, and another friend named Nils Stewart, who were nice people, but he would make it a point to like kind of even off camera do things like wrench their arms. He actually tore Nils's bicep for no reason. Just to, and
But how was he afterwards? Was he apologetic or?
the next day he was.
Oh, but
When someone pulls up and outshines you at your own game, it cuts deep. And now, Michael Jai White is finally laying it all on the table about his long-standing beef with Steven Seagal. And this tea is scorching. Michael's never been shy about not vibing with Seagal, but this time, he went off. In a recent interview, Michael flat out roasted Seagal, calling him out for being arrogant, disrespectful, and straight up impossible to be around. But here's where it really gets wild. Michael said Seagal carried himself like a full-blown racist who thought he was better than everyone else on set. People were shocked, but also not surprised, because Seagal's been shady for a minute. This feud's been simmering for years, and now it's finally boiling over into one of the craziest showdowns in Hollywood action history. But what exactly did Michael spill? And hold up. Is it really true that Seagal dipped out of the US because he's got federal charges hanging over him? And those racist allegations? Yeah. Hollywood is shook. This drama goes way back to the early 2000s, and let's be real, it was never about friendship. Michael saw Seagal's behavior for what it was: toxic, egotistical, and straight-up disrespectful. Word around the industry was that Seagal was a nightmare on set, and Michael? He just got tired of staying quiet.
I did a movie with him called Executive Decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh yeah, all three of you saw it. and the first day we get together for rehearsal with the actors and the director, he comes in, I'm in command. What I say is law. You disagree? And I started cracking. I was like, I thought he was kidding. We were just hanging out.
Yeah.
And he Aikito'd me against a brick wall. Wow! Knocked all the air out of me. I was like, what?
Now the lid's been blown clean off. Michael's revealing that Seagal nearly torpedoed his whole career during his prime, all out of jealousy and spite. Seagal used to run the action genre like a boss, building his brand off that tough guy persona. But behind closed doors, he was acting like the villain he pretended to fight on screen. Now let's talk about Michael Jai White. He's the real deal. A legit martial artist, respected tournament champ, and someone who gets mad props from the biggest names in combat sports. The man's put in the work, and everyone knows it. Even with all the tension, Michael and Seagal actually teamed up a few times. Seagal even personally invited him to star in and help direct a couple of his projects. But everything flipped in 2012, and not in a small way.
Steven Seagal on a film you did together, correct?
Yeah, something like that. He hurt, a few people on the set purposely. And it's like, if
Really?
you're acting and we're working together, I'm trusting you not to, take advantage of the situation and vice versa, And he put one guy's, a stunt guy, put his head through the window. With his, he was just supposed to act like he hit him. He actually grabbed the guy and pushed his head through the window, and the one move where he has my arms behind my back and we're both supposed to drop to the ground at the same time. On cue, I drop and he stays up, dislocated my shoulder.
Really?
But
Wow.
what goes around comes around, and he ended up hurting himself on the set and was out for 2 weeks. So.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
During an interview, Seagal was asked if he thought Michael was a great fighter. What did he do? He laughed in the man's face. Then came the coldest line. Seagal straight up said he didn't respect Michael's career. At all. People weren't even shocked. That's how deep Seagal's ego runs. He's always had this weird habit of trashing other fighters just to boost his own image. But this time, it hit different. You disrespect someone you brought into your circle? That's a whole other level of petty. From that moment on, whatever mutual respect was left got crushed. The vibe between them turned ice cold. And it's wild, because back in the day, Seagal's career was untouchable. Fans acted like he was the second coming of Bruce Lee. No joke. As a young guy, Seagal even flew out to Japan to fully immerse himself in martial arts culture. And it wasn't just for show. He earned a legit black belt in Aikido. That's the kind of martial art where you move with your opponent's energy and shut things down using smooth control instead of brute force. But somewhere along the line, Seagal stopped living that philosophy and started beefing instead.
So horrible on such a scale. It was such a huge scale of terribleness that it wasn't undeniable by anyone who was there. I remember at one point he locked himself in this dressing room because he said that you're saying Hans and Franz could beat me up and I'm not coming out of the dressing room until you change the sketch. Like, I mean, it was really legendary.
Aikido's supposed to be about peace, control, and keeping your inner rage on lock. But Seagal clearly missed that lesson. He married Miyako Fujitani, whose family was straight-up martial arts royalty in Japan. Through them, he slid into a powerful position, running their Aikido dojo. That made him the first American ever to teach at a traditional Aikido school in Japan. That wasn't just rare, that was legendary. Eventually, Seagal packed up and moved back to the US, where he opened his own dojo in Los Angeles. Still riding that martial arts wave. But then in 1988, things exploded. That's when Seagal hit the big screen in Above the Law, the first American action film to showcase Aikido-style combat. The movie popped off, and suddenly his name was being dropped alongside heavyweights like Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and Stallone. Then came Under Siege in 1992, and that one cemented his status. He played Casey Ryback, a Navy SEAL turned cook who single-handedly takes down hijackers on a battleship.
You want me to do a martial art fight scene with you but I'm fighting on the side of racist white people.
That film was a box office monster. It made Seagal a legit action star, with enough buzz to pull a sequel just 3 years later in '95, Under Siege 2, Dark Territory. But behind the scenes, Seagal's rep was already starting to crack. The same year that sequel dropped, Hollywood was buzzing with stories. And they weren't good. Whispers turned to warnings. This guy was hardcore difficult to work with. And the red flags had started even earlier. Back in '91, Seagal was invited to host Saturday Night Live, a major moment for any celeb. But his episode? Straight up disaster. Cast and crew said he was impossible, trying to control everything and clashing with everyone on set. That hosting gig ended up being one of the most infamous flops in SNL history. SNL legend Lorne Michaels, plus cast members David Spade and Tim Meadows, all agreed on one thing. Seagal was the worst host the show ever had. Behind the scenes, he was out of control, disrespecting writers, clashing with cast members, and flat out refusing to do a Hans and Franz skit just because the characters once joked about beating him up. Seriously? But it gets even weirder. Julia Sweeney, another SNL cast member, later exposed one of Seagal's sketch ideas, and it wasn't just bad, it was straight up disturbing.
Can you think of one?
Michael Jai White?
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
The plot involved a woman who had just been assaulted, and instead of helping her, the therapist tries to hook up with her. Like, what was he even thinking? That wasn't just tone deaf. People were horrified. That's when the mask started to slip. Behind all the fake Zen warrior energy, folks saw Seagal for what he really was. A bully with a big ego who thought he could say anything and treat people however he wanted. That bad energy didn't stay on the comedy set either. It followed him everywhere, from action film sets to real martial arts circles. He acted like he was untouchable, trash-talking real fighters, belittling co-stars, and walking around like he was the one and only. But when it came time to back it up, Seagal was always nowhere to be found. And here's the thing. In Hollywood, you can only step on so many toes before the calls stop coming. And for Seagal, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, he could throw some kicks, But his acting, not so much. After Under Siege, it was all downhill. From Fire Down Below to The Glimmer Man, it was flop after flop. By 2001, his box office magic was gone. That's when Exit Wounds came into the picture. And it was Seagal's last real shot. Exit Wounds was supposed to be Seagal's big comeback. The setup was solid. A decent plot, big-name producers, a heavy budget, and a cast stacked with stars like DMX and Isaiah Washington. And yeah, Seagal even brought in the one and only martial arts powerhouse Michael Jai White.
And when I really flared toward him is that he was hurting the stunt guys. And one of my very good friends, a guy named James Lou, and another friend named Nils Stewart, who were nice people, but he would make it a point to like kind of even off camera do things like wrench their arms. He actually tore Nils's bicep for no reason. Just to, and
But how was he afterwards? Was he apologetic or?
the next day he was.
Oh, but
Michael wasn't just a screen fighter. He was the real deal. A world-class martial artist, respected by top-tier athletes across every combat sport. This guy didn't just look tough, he was tough. And he wasn't just throwing punches in front of the camera either. Behind the scenes, he was working with top producers to choreograph fight scenes that felt raw, gritty, and real. Slowly, but surely, his name was ringing louder in the action film world. So when Exit Wounds got the green light, it looked like a surefire hit. But of course, Seagal's ego had to get in the way, again. By that point, the industry had caught on. People knew the truth. Working with Seagal was a nightmare, especially if you were a stunt performer. The man had a rep for going completely off script during fight scenes, hitting people way harder than necessary. We're not talking a few bruises. We're talking hospital-level injuries. Stunt guys dreaded getting assigned to his scenes. It wasn't just a role. It became a full-on risk.
I did a movie with him called Executive Decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh yeah, all three of you saw it. and the first day we get together for rehearsal with the actors and the director, he comes in, I'm in command. What I say is law. You disagree? And I started cracking. I was like, I thought he was kidding. We were just hanging out.
Yeah.
And he Aikido'd me against a brick wall. Wow! Knocked all the air out of me. I was like, what?
One of the worst moments came in 2004 on the set of On Deadly Ground. Seagal totally ignored the script during a fight with Vaco Thorson, a well-respected actor and stunt veteran. Instead of pulling the punch like any professional would, Seagal went full force. No warning, no control. That's not just unprofessional. That's straight up reckless. And stories like that? They followed him everywhere, turning what could have been his big comeback into just another chapter in the fall of Steven Seagal. Seagal hit Vaco Thorson straight in the throat. Full force. No pullback, no stunt safety. Thorson was injured on the spot. And that wasn't even a one-time thing. Another moment? Seagal slammed actor John Leguizamo against a brick wall, just because John laughed when Seagal said he was in charge. Leguizamo later said it himself. Seagal couldn't tell the difference between acting tough on camera and being out of control in real life.
So horrible on such a scale. It was such a huge scale of terribleness that it was undeniable by anyone who was there. I remember at one point he locked himself in this dressing room because he said, you're saying Hans and Franz could beat me up and I'm not coming out of the dressing room until you change the sketch. Like, I mean, it was really legendary.
He walked around like he was some kind of real-life superhero, even off set. And during Exit Wounds, that energy was worse than ever. The tension on set was unbearable. People didn't even want to be in the same room as Seagal, let alone work with him. Cast, crew, everyone was either tiptoeing around or completely done with his bullying ways. He refused to take direction, ignored the camera setups, and straight up refused to do anything that made him look vulnerable, including something as basic as running on screen. Even comedian Tom Arnold couldn't stand being around him. But then it got tragic. While filming a high-risk vehicle stunt, veteran stuntman Chris Lamont had a devastating fall. He hit his head hard. This wasn't some rookie. Chris was a seasoned pro who had worked on major films. But something went terribly wrong that day. He was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries were too much. Chris didn't make it. The entire stunt team was shaken. The fear was real. One of their own was gone. And the energy on set? It turned ice cold. After that, every move felt dangerous. Every stunt became a gamble. You'd think that kind of loss would have humbled Seagal, made him reflect, maybe even change. But no, he kept pushing, kept doing things his way, no matter who got hurt. What should have been standard action scenes turned into injury zones, all because Seagal wouldn't stick to the plan. Even DMX wasn't safe from Seagal's mess. Word is, during a scene, Seagal twisted DMX's arm, hard, and went completely off script. That reckless move sent DMX crashing to the ground, and he was livid. By the time filming wrapped, the entire crew was done with Seagal. People were literally counting down the minutes until he left the set for good. The final scene was supposed to be epic. The showdown, Michael Jai White versus Seagal, hero versus villain, real martial artist versus fake tough guy. The whole movie had been building up to this one moment. But behind the scenes, things got real. Michael later revealed that during those final days, crew members and cast were pulling him aside, one by one, whispering that they wanted him to drop Seagal. Not just in the scene, but for real. People were fed up. They wanted Seagal humbled, bruised, maybe even sent packing before the cameras stopped rolling. And honestly, Michael could have done it, no question. The man is a respected martial artist with years of serious training under his belt. Meanwhile, Seagal? At that point, he was just a washed-up star still pretending to run things. Michael had seen him bully too many people, for too long. Any respect that was left had vanished. But Michael? He kept it cool, stayed professional, took the high road, no cheap shots, no drama, just class. But the fight scene? Total letdown. Thanks to a clause in Seagal's contract, no one was allowed to actually hit him. Michael couldn't even go full speed. Everything had to be slowed down, watered down, made to protect Seagal's ego. What could have been a legendary action scene turned into a weak finish, all because Seagal couldn't handle getting touched on screen. What should have been a jaw-dropping final battle turned into a clunky, awkward mess. Then in 2012, Seagal added insult to injury. During an interview, someone asked if Michael Jai White was a great fighter, and Seagal laughed. Just straight up laughed like it was a joke. For Michael, that moment said everything. It confirmed what he already suspected. Seagal was just a small-minded, insecure dude who couldn't stand being around real talent. And Seagal's career? It never recovered. After burning bridge after bridge in Hollywood, he vanished into the shadows, cranking out over-the-top, low-budget action flicks for random studios in Thailand. But it gets way messier. Word's been floating around that Seagal might be dodging legal heat in the US, which could explain why he's been camped out in Russia for years now. Yup. If you missed it, Vladimir Putin granted Seagal Russian citizenship back in November 2016. And no, it wasn't just a random favor. Seagal had been riding hard for Putin for years. He claimed he had Russian roots and went all in on the pro-Putin media train once Hollywood froze him out. He even started calling Putin his brother, praising him as one of the greatest world leaders alive. And guess what? Putin didn't just hand him a passport. He later gave Seagal the Order of Friendship, supposedly for his contributions to global culture and humanitarian cooperation. But let's be real, it was deeper than that. Seagal wasn't just showing love. He got fully involved in Russian propaganda. Once the war in Ukraine kicked off, he backed Russia hard. Not only did he defend their actions publicly, he also helped produce multiple films pushing narratives that made Russians look like the heroes. and painted Ukrainians as the bad guys. And one of those pro-Russia films? It's got people seriously questioning just how far Seagal is willing to go. The film's called In the Name of Justice, and it's wild. In it, Seagal visits war-torn areas of Ukraine, but instead of showing the real suffering on the ground, the movie twists the story completely. It pushes the idea that Ukrainians somehow deserved what happened to them. And that's not even the worst part. In a 2020 clip, Seagal actually called Ukrainians Nazis, flat out blaming them for starting the war. Ever since then, he's doubled down again and again, jumping at every opportunity to twist the narrative in Russia's favor. With all this heat on his name, a Hollywood career that's long gone, and legal whispers floating in the air, it's clear. Steven Seagal didn't just vanish, he relocated. And now, his new stage isn't action films, it's international propaganda. People were quick to call him out. His comments weren't just controversial, they were seen as racist, offensive, and completely out of pocket. But the mess doesn't stop there. Word on the street is Seagal's also knee-deep in serious tax trouble back in the States. We're talking the kind that could ruin you. And if there's one thing everybody knows, it's this. Uncle Sam doesn't play when it comes to taxes. So now folks are asking the real question. Why else would Seagal suddenly bounce to Russia and stay there? That's right. Russia has no extradition treaty with the US. Sure doesn't sound like a man just taking a vacation. Seagal packed up everything and built a whole new life in Russia. And let's be real, it's starting to feel a lot less like a relocation and a whole lot more like someone trying to disappear. Word is, Seagal's been quietly selling off his US properties, one by one, like he knows he's not coming back. Meanwhile, Michael Jai White? He's never looked at Seagal the same after all that chaos. In a recent interview, Michael torched him, saying Seagal's acting was so stiff, anybody's dad could pull off those weak fight scenes. Brutal. And get this, Seagal actually tried to reach out after all that. He apologized, tried to smooth things over, but Michael wasn't buying it. He saw right through the act. That apology? It wasn't about making peace, it was pure damage control. At this point, Michael doesn't even need to drag him. Seagal's been doing all the damage himself, with every sketchy move and every shady headline. And honestly, for someone who once ran the action genre like a boss, this fall from grace is hard to watch. From Hollywood elite to hiding out overseas, surrounded by controversy, legal drama, and propaganda ties, Seagal's legacy isn't what it used to be. Not even close. But now we want to hear your take. What do you think about Steven Seagal's downfall? Was it karma, ego, or something else? Make sure you like, subscribe, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Smash that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. We've got more wild stories on the way. Thanks for riding with us through this saga. And as always, catch you in the next one.